I'm the one. I'm the one who
Wow.
Right.
The anime begins by introducing us to the hero Dias, who has been on the road for a month since being half-forced into a carriage leaving the royal capital. After this long and arduous journey, the driver leaves him in the middle of nowhere in an open field and tells him that this is a fitting domain for an upstart orphan. The driver then gives him a map demarcating the territory and an inventory granted to him by the king. He also informs him that this grassland is called Nezros, so from today onward, his name will be Dias Nezros. Once the driver leaves, Dias takes a look around the territory he has been given, which was granted to him by the king as a reward for his service in the war. And although he doesn't quite know what to do, it seems that a lord's duty is to live here, protect his people, and collect money from them to give to the king. After a short while, he feels somewhat relieved to find a river with clean water, but despite having walked quite a distance, he can't see anyone else, not even a single tree. Since his domain is really nothing but grass, he decides that if things don't improve in 2 days, he will leave before he starves to death. After spending the night there, the next morning he's forcibly awakened by a non-human woman named Alna, who rudely asks him who he is. He calmly tells her his name, still a little surprised and confused, so Alna then asks him what he's doing there, to which Diaz simply replies that there was nowhere else to sleep. Alna thinks he's a fool, but still not satisfied. She asks him why he's come to this prairie and what his purpose is. Unable to give a half-hearted answer due to how angry she is, Diaz tells her that he wants to fulfill his parents' dying wishes and be useful to people, so his purpose is to protect the weak. At those words, the horn on Alna's forehead begins to glow a bright blue, and she asks Diaz why he hasn't lied to her. Diaz simply tells her that it's because he has no reason to, and immediately afterward, Alna's horn glows blue again. Still very upset, she suddenly asks him if he is her ally or enemy, and even though Diaz doesn't understand why she's so angry, he remembers that this is his territory, and therefore, she is one of his subjects, and since he is her lord, it must bother her that he doesn't claim to be an ally of her people. With that in mind, he suddenly and firmly tells her that he is her ally, and that no matter who they face, he swears to protect her. Alna's horn glows a much more intense blue than before, which makes her wonder why and fills her with confusion. After that, she forcibly leads him in a certain direction, and they soon arrive at a small village located in that territory, which leaves Diaz confused, since he didn't find them earlier when he was exploring the area. Here he is taken to the tribe's chieftain, Mal, who asks Alna if she didn't see any red. Alna replies that she didn't, and that everything was blue, so Mal tells Diaz that even though he claimed to be Alna's ally, she wants to know if he will also be hers. Diaz affirms that he will, and explains that they are all his people, because the king ordered him to come to these lands to be their lord. This makes Alna really aggressive toward him, but Mal prevents her from attacking him and asks Diaz to explain everything everything from the beginning. Without much hesitation, Diaz tells them that when he was old enough to understand, his parents were still alive. His mother always told him to find a job to help people, and his father told him to become strong to protect the weak. Those were their last wishes, because when Diaz turned 10, they both died in an epidemic. He gathered other orphans like himself, and they earned money by keeping the town clean and from the bounties for hunting weak monsters. He abided by his parents' dying wishes and tried hard to live in a way that'd make them proud. When he was 15, war broke out, and it didn't take long for enemy troops to reach a neighboring town. He enlisted in the army to protect his friends, and at that time he wasn't aware that he had a talent for fighting, but in the end, he achieved very good results in his battles. And then, after 20 years, the war came to an end, and the king rewarded him with this territory. After listening attentively, the chieftain says it's clear to her that Diaz is a man willing to protect his people, which is why she wants to ask him what he would do if they weren't his people. Diaz tells her that they can be neighbors without any problems, as well as allies, and the leader, seeing a deep blue glow on her horn, is relieved by his words, as is Alna. At that moment, Diaz barely realizes what's happening, and the chieftain, noticing his expression, confirms once and for all that they are not his people, but rather enemies of his king. But she clarifies that even though they have been fighting against his kingdom for many years, they might not be his enemies, since he is a very intense blue, which means they should be able to get along. She finally introduces herself properly, saying that she is the chieftain of the Anakin tribe, who for a long time fought against his kingdom over the sovereignty of these grasslands. They lost a great battle 50 years ago, and the Anakin fled this place. Maul then reveals that by accumulating mana in their horns, they can use various spells, and one of them is concealment, which allows them to hide the entire village and erase their presence. Diaz now understands how he didn't find them yesterday, but asks if it's alright for her to tell him this, since on the kingdom's side. Maul explains that she wouldn't have done it if he weren't blue, and that's because there's a spell called Soul Appraisal. Red indicates danger or hostility, white indicates harmlessness, and blue represents someone who brings joy or blessings. If he had lied even a little, it would have dulled toward red, but that didn't happen in his case even once, and that completely convinced her. With that settled, she tells Diaz that she will give him her full support to become a great lord. Although they won't be his subjects, they will provide him with shelter and food, even some livestock, and in return, she doesn't want him to tell anyone about the existence of this village, not even the king. Diaz tells her that he has nothing against them, so as long as they don't cause trouble with the kingdom, he doesn't mind them living there. With that settled, Maul tells Diaz that she will lend him Alna for a while to help him with everything, so they will live together, and Alna will show him how life is in this place. Alna overreacts to this, but Maul tells her that since she was the one who brought him, she must take responsibility until the end. Later, the Anakin men build the house where Diaz will live. Here, Alna explains that when danger approaches that they can't avoid with concealment, they dismantle their dwellings and flee with them, so that's what this yurt is for. Now that he understands this, Diaz thanks the men for their help, though they don't seem very pleased with him. A little while later, Alna tells him that the food and the bars, or livestock, will arrive soon. If he breeds the pair and increases the herd, he'll have a stable income, so she'll teach him how to care for them when they arrive, and she hopes he'll pay attention. Diaz thanks her for that, but also decides to ask her to teach him how to get more subjects. Alna doesn't give him a very helpful answer, and asks him why he wants more subjects in his current situation. Considering he only has one yurt and enough food for himself, if he had more people, they would starve for sure after all. Diaz is speechless at this logic, and then Alna gives him Matani dust, which will help him attract beasts if he spreads it around. If he hunts them and brings enough meat and hides back to the village, they can give him another yurt, depending on the number he catches. Diaz is happy about this, since he's very good at hunting, especially because he doesn't need to use his head for that. After putting on his armor and carrying his battle axe, he moves far enough from the village, and since he doesn't know how much Matani dust to use, he doesn't think twice and goes with the whole thing. A few seconds later, a stampede of beasts rushes toward him, and instead of being scared, he gets into position to hunt the entire pack, so they'll give him several yurts. As soon as they reach him, he begins to take them down one after another with each blow he throws. His fighting style consists of letting himself be guided by instinct and wielding his battle axe with force, and all there is to it. After a while, he sees almost half of them have escaped, but he still thinks that's enough for today. However, now he wonders how he's going to carry them all to the village. Later that afternoon, he returns with only one, and he's certain Alna is going to scold him for such a poor catch. To his surprise, Alna is astonished to see him with such a beast, and exclaims that he has taken down a black yi on his first hunt, which proves his manliness very well. Diaz didn't even know that was the name of this beast, and he clarifies that this wasn't his only prey, but that he hunted almost half of the pack, but he couldn't bring them all back. Alna quickly asks him how many he's talking about, so he replies that it's about 30 or 40. This easily gets her even more excited, so she tells him that it's an incredible number, and that's why she now has a much better opinion of him. Moments later, Maul arrives to tell him that he has proven his manliness on his first outing, while Alna, all cheerful and very different from how she was before, leaves to find the men of the tribe to help. Diaz is surprised not only by her change, but also because it's the first time Alna has called him by his name. And since Diaz doesn't know what they mean by manliness, Mal explains that it's a man's value. Knowing how to work and being able to provide, all of that encompasses manliness. And since Alna is a grown woman, it is logical that she is happy at such manliness. Diaz asks if being manly makes one attractive, to which Mal replies that being handsome or having a silver tongue doesn't fill a stomach, because if they marry someone without manliness, even the children will go hungry. For that very reason, anything other than manliness has no value for a woman, which allows Diaz to see that they have very different values from those of the kingdom. Mal also tells him that since Alna is beautiful and hardworking, the engagement gift will be bigger if he wants to marry her, although Diaz quickly assures her that this is not his intention. The next day, Alna greets Diaz with a hearty breakfast and is genuinely pleased when he compliments her cooking. After that, she asks him what he's going to hunt today, because if he's going to gather more people here, he needs a well and a privy, and right now he can't afford to pay the craftsmen who make them. He thinks about hunting some more black guies, but Alna warns him that the villagers don't want him hunting the same beasts all the time, so she suggests he hunt monsters instead. Diaz is aware that the flesh of monsters is not edible because it is covered in miasma, but their claws, horns, and magic stones sell for a good price. With this in mind, Alna tells him that she can use her magic to find the monsters, and assures him they'll have more fun if they go together. Before leaving, Diaz and the other Anakin men are surprised to see Alna's attire for hunting. She's wearing a different kind of makeup that accentuates her beauty, and her kindness to Diaz makes the other men envious. After a while, they arrive at a rocky area where Alna uses her search magic, which unexpectedly leads them to an earth dragon. Since Diaz is unaware of its power, he immediately decides to attack this turtle-looking beast, but Alna quickly tells him not to, completely terrified of it. Despite this, Diaz ignores her warnings and launches an attack, but the monster retreats into its shell just in time. Diaz never gives up, as his strategy consists of delivering one blow after another, which has always been his fighting style. For this reason, he begins to strike his battle axe against the shell, but after doing so a few times, the edge of his weapon cracks. Faced with this, Diaz concentrates to ask his battle axe to repair itself, which causes a special magic to return it to its initial state. It turns out he got this axe after defeating a shogun from a neighboring country, and it is shaped like a lion and is incredibly durable. Minor damage heals itself over time, and if he commands it to repair itself, it is restored instantly. With such a weapon, he now dedicates himself to relentlessly attacking the shell at the same spot, and after a while, when the sun sets, he finally manages to make a crack in it. Perceiving this damage, the dragon finally attacks, and one of its flames nearly hits Alna directly. Realizing she is vulnerable, the dragon tries to attack her instead, but Diaz reminds himself that he made an oath, which is that no matter who they face, he will protect her. With steely determination, Diaz moves faster and delivers a fatal blow to the earth dragon's neck, which is enough to defeat it once and for all. After witnessing this, Alna suddenly throws herself at Diaz, completely overwhelmed, and declares through tears of joy that she will marry him. After the events, moving the earth dragon proved an extremely difficult task, and by the time they reached the village, it was already fully dawn. While Diaz doesn't understand the feat he has just accomplished, Mal tells him that she finds it hard to believe that he defeated it alone. Diaz, on the other hand, asks for a well and a privy in exchange for the monster, although first he wants to know if he has enough for that. Mal explains that just one of the monster's legs would be enough for a lot of them, and that it is so valuable that it surpasses them, so they will have to return most of the materials. What they could offer in return is butchering the beast, along with the well and privy, materials for the yurt, provisions, and medicinal herbs. They were also going to build him a yurt to use as a storage space, and the rest would be for Alna's wedding gift. Diaz is petrified when he hears that last part, and Mal tells him that Alna's parents will be pleased if he gives her a fang or a claw. After that, she makes it clear that he's going to marry her whether he wants to or not, because they have a dragon slayer as a neighbor who frightens them a bit, and that's why it's necessary to form a strong bond with him. Besides, by hunting that dragon, he has proven himself to be a great man, so if he doesn't marry Alna, all the single women in the village will be all over him. This doesn't sit well with Diaz, so Mal tells him to calm down, because Alna has already spoken to her parents about the wedding. Diaz tries to convince her to agree to call it an engagement, but Mal tells him that Anakin don't have that custom. They simply marry, and that's it, though they can choose when to do so. She also points out that if they strengthen their bond, it will be easier to support him in becoming a great lord. After listening to her, Diaz asks her why she cares so much, to which Mal replies that it's because they know what kind of lord would come if he loses his position, since the previous one was completely useless. Once she leaves, some men tending to the dragon's carcass talk about how Alna doesn't waste any time, despite being young, and since Diaz is interested in her age, they reveal to him that she has just turned 15, which is precisely the age to get married. Upon hearing this, Diaz is completely perplexed because he is 35 years old. He knows that in the kingdom, the minimum age for marriage is 18, so he wants them to be engaged for 3 years at least, during which time he will become a true lord. Moments later, Alna arrives to tell him that they have reached an agreement and sweetly asks him what he wants for breakfast tomorrow. Diaz tells her that she can cook whatever she likes, which she accepts happily and leaves with excitement. Later, Diaz becomes quite tense during the banquet held in their honor, and although he tries to explain that it is only an engagement, the Anakin pay no attention and assume they are all already married. Shortly after the
Excuse me, sir. How old were you when you made your first million?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice for the younger gen.
banquet, they finish the well and the privy and settle in completely. Here, he finishes building a yurt and realizes he needs to improve his construction technique so his new subjects don't have to sleep in the open. This makes him wonder what he needs to do to attract new subjects, as he has no idea how to do it. Suddenly, Alna alerts him that she has detected a monster in the north as she cast a life detection spell in the prairie and it has just activated. She also explains that there's only one, and although it's not very big, it seems to be heading towards them. Diaz sees it as a problem that it might destroy what they've built, or that it might scare the bars, so he decides to go and eliminate it. Alna immediately tells him she'll go with him, but Diaz asks her what will happen to the bars. Even though they're asleep in the stable, if they wake up on their own, they'll feel sad and cry, and that's important because domestic bars get distressed if they don't feel someone nearby. Faced with this problem, Alna suggests leaving them with the Anakin men who are arriving, so with that settled, they both head towards the monster. When they get close, they both realize it's an ogre, from which they gain nothing by hunting it because its materials are incredibly stinky. But since they have no other option, they go straight for it. Although the ogre starts evading Diaz because it's quite agile, Alna immediately warns Diaz that she's going to distract him so he can attack, and after loading a good number of arrows onto her bow, she fires them in the monster's direction, one of them striking it in the leg. After giving the signal, Diaz quickly lunges at the ogre, breaking through his weapon until he delivers a fatal blow. With that settled, Alna repeats that they are better off working together, especially since they are married, and when Diaz tries to remind her that they are engaged, she interrupts him to complain about his bad smell. He notices just then that he's covered in the ogre's blood, and since he can't enter the yurt in that state, Diaz is forced to wash for hours, as it's quite difficult to remove that stench. The next day, Alna gives him the news that the bars will have babies, which they celebrate as a very good thing. After that, Diaz goes to see the bars, where he pampers the female Francoise with caresses for having offspring so soon, and as the male Francis gets jealous, Diaz pampers him too. Here, Alna tells him that not all the news is good, and reminds him of what she taught him about the intelligence of the bars. Diaz already knows this, keeping in mind that the bars perfectly understand human language, and that they voluntarily domesticated themselves to live more safely. Alna explains that because of their intelligence, the bars are sensitive to fear and stress, especially during pregnancy, and sometimes fear overwhelms them so much that they can die. That's why the strongest member of the herd, meaning him, must be by their side to provide them with security until the birth. For this reason, they will have to put Francis and Francoise in the yurt, but it will inevitably get dirty and smell bad. This worries her because some men detest that and can't stand it, and that's why couples argue more when the bars become pregnant. After listening to her, Diaz is relieved that this is the whole problem and assures her that it doesn't bother him at all. He then tells her that Francis and Francoise are an important part of the family, so if he has to endure this so that their children are born healthy, then it's no problem for him. Alna, quite moved, tells him that he not only has manliness, but also a big heart, and that is why she is proud of her husband. Suddenly, the bars say something to Alna, which makes her nervous and prompts her to ask what they're saying, since she and Diaz haven't done anything yet. Francis makes another comment, and Alna asks him not to be so vulgar, explaining that they're forging their bond little by little. Diaz doesn't understand anything at first, but covers his face when he realizes it must be a somewhat personal conversation. At that moment, Alna's horn glows green, and she informs him that the signal is coming from the east, and judging by their presence, they are probably humans, who are also bringing horses, about 10 in total, or so she believes. Diaz knows the capital is in that direction, but he's not expecting visitors, so he decides to go and take a look. There, he asks Alna to use concealment to hide with the bars, and since they're worried he'll leave, he assures them he'll be right back. Alna tells him that she'll keep an eye on the place while they wait, and with that sorted, Diaz quickly advances toward the group with battle axe in hand. Just as he's about to check if they're allies or enemies, one of them recognizes him and comes over to greet him. Diaz realizes it's Klaus, a good friend of his, and Klaus congratulates him on becoming a lord. After that, he explains that he was only ordered to come as a guide and escort, and that it's the young lady over there who has business with him. Diaz is surprised to see her, but ends up wondering who she is since he doesn't know her at all. Following that, Klaus asks if he could take them to his mansion, as they've been traveling for over 2 weeks and everyone is exhausted. Without hesitation, Diaz leads them to his yurt, and once inside, he thinks it was a good thing they hid everything except the yurt he built for practice. He also thinks that he promised to keep the secret of the Anakin, and that it would have been a nuisance to have to give them explanations. Although the visitors are a little taken aback by the yurt, the young lady remains cordial and greets him, referring to him as Hero Diaz. There, she introduces herself as the third princess, Diane, and asks if his mansion is still under construction, adding that she doesn't see any servants. Since Diaz calls her by her name directly, one of the soldiers gets annoyed and demands that he address her as Her Highness Diane, but she calms him down. After that, Diaz explains to Diane that he doesn't own a mansion or have servants, and that he only possesses this house, and although it might not look very nice, he put a lot of effort into building it. Diane is surprised that he built it himself, so she asks him what happened to his craftsmen, since she understood that the king had given him a large reward and funds to settle there. To this, Diaz clarifies that he hasn't received a single copper coin, and that he was left to his own devices, without even being given water or food. At first, he even thought he would die in this place. While Diane remains quite surprised, Klaus holds back his anger as best he can, as it is a terrible thing he didn't even know. Diaz now asks her what brings her here, to which Diane replies that it would be war, and tells him that in the capital rumors of a new conflict are increasing. For that reason, she came to ask him, the hero who saved the kingdom, for troops and help, and as a reward, she offers her hand in marriage, or that of Prenecia or Meralda, who are standing behind her. Although Diaz seems to be thinking about it, in his mind, he immediately rejects the war, because he does not intend to separate from Françoise right now, and marrying someone he has just met is not seen as any reward. Besides that, the radiant Alna comes to mind, so, more than convinced, he tells Diane that he's sorry, but he won't participate in any war again. He also points out that he can't send any troops, since, as she can see, he has no soldiers and not a single subject in this place. His refusal makes Diane truly upset, and so she asks if he couldn't reconsider, since they might offer other rewards. However, Diaz interrupts her, making it clear that he can't help them, and clarifies that if that's all, then they have to leave now. Once again, the soldier is enraged by the disrespect shown to the princess, but when he draws his weapon to do something about it, Diaz immediately swings his battle axe, shattering it with a single blow. After making that move in an instant, Diaz thinks he didn't sense any real murderous intent from him, and that if he was trying to intimidate him, it was a rather pathetic attempt. After that, in a firmer voice, he tells them that they're finished here, so he wants them to leave immediately. Klaus tells them that even if they all attack together, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it, and convinces them to retreat. As for Diane, she's quite offended that Diaz rejected her, and she's inwardly certain that he'll regret this someday. Once they're far enough away, Alna appears beside Diaz and informs him that all those women were red, and although one soldier was bright blue, the rest were red and white. She then explains that Françoise started crying because she wanted to be with him, so they were observing from there using concealment. Diaz indulges the bars for this, and also does the same for Alna when she subtly asks him to. Here, Diaz asks Alna if the women's hostility was directed at her, but she denies it, and explains that her soul appraisal tells her if they are hostile to both of them. After all, they are family now. Diaz agrees with her, and assumes that the one soldier in deep blue is Klaus. On a new day, Alna welcomes Diaz in the morning while preparing food, but suddenly detects visitors, who are just a human from the east, who is also wandering aimlessly. Diaz decides to go and check, and Alna accompanies him along with the bars, so that they are not affected by his absence. Later, Diaz realizes that the unexpected visitor is Klaus, who, after being overjoyed to see him, tells him that he wanted to go to his house but ended up getting lost. Diaz asks him if he didn't return to the capital, and what happened to his armor. Klaus explains that he was discharged from the army, so they took away his sword and armor. He immediately clarifies that it wasn't because of what happened, and that if there's another war, they'll surely send him to the front lines. But since he didn't want that, he made sure he was discharged on purpose. However, it happened at the perfect time, because there's something he wants to do, which is to work for him, so he asks if he would hire him as his soldier. Diaz is quite surprised by this, but he remembers that Klaus never discriminated against him for being an orphan, and that he trusted him enough to have his back in the war, so he's a trustworthy man. Since he can't decide on his own, Alna stops hiding and tells him that it doesn't bother her, as Klaus's color has been blue all this time, and she thanks Diaz for waiting for her opinion on the matter. Klaus is quite surprised to see her appear out of nowhere along with those unfamiliar animals, but when Diaz invites him to join them, he gladly accepts, and ultimately doesn't question anything. 10 days have passed since then, and Klaus is still glad he came here. What happened was that Diaz helped him build a new yurt, and gave him a spear and armor made from dragon materials. He gave him something so valuable that not even royalty could obtain it, so he wants to live up to his expectations. At lunchtime, Klaus tells Alna that she will make an excellent wife because of how good her cooking is, which makes Diaz tense up again. On the other hand, Alna is so pleased by his compliments that she even offers him more food. After that, she tells Klaus what the bars say, which is that since they contribute in their own way, they want him to be a useful man too. Klaus quickly declares that he will do his best as captain so as not to disappoint them, while Diaz thinks that for the moment, Klaus is the only member of the troops, but he is motivated, which is what matters. Here, Alna senses something with her magic and warns Diaz that 12 are approaching from the east, all of them human. Apparently, one of the 12 she sensed is so weak they might die, and so Diaz decides to go before it's too late. Before leaving, he asks Klaus to stay on guard, because if he sees them acting strangely, he'll send the others back, and he wants Klaus to protect them all there. Klaus agrees without hesitation, and as he watches them disappear thanks to Alna's concealment, he's amazed at how incredible that magic is. He also knows that the royal capital lies to the east, and right now, the 5 princes and princesses are in the grips for a succession dispute. Since the 3rd princess, Diane, has less military strength than the other factions, she was likely trying to win Diaz over, and if Diaz never received his reward, it must have been embezzled by the 2nd second prince, known for his avarice. The nobility has split into factions, and the effects of their bickering and schemes are felt even out on the frontier, which displeases him greatly. Klaus is aware that one day the conflict might make its way here, but he won't mind if it means he can fight and die in Dias's service. Just then, Dias returns with more people, and once the elderly women are settled there, Alna gives them medicine and food. That night, Dias explains to Klaus that they were banished because there was a rebellion in a neighboring domain, and a poor village expelled the old women to have fewer mouths to feed. Upon hearing this, Klaus tells him that this territory is likely Kazdek's, since he passed through there on his way here and they were in terrible condition. Dias remarks that he is amazed by them, and that Grandma Maya is their leader, who, thanks to her divination, found a way to survive, which allowed them to reach this point. Following this, he exclaims that this is great, since he has gained 12 subjects at once, something Klaus already knew he would say. Right after, Dias sets about building more yurts, but Klaus stops him to tell him that he can treat the old women as he wishes, but that he must keep in mind that they will not be productive. Dias quickly tells him that is the most incredible thing of all, since they are all over 70 years old, and Maya is 90, so he hopes they will tell him their secrets to longevity. While Dias is busy with his own thoughts, Alna tells Klaus that she agrees with her husband. After all, he is the lord of this territory. After that, she tells them that the bars want them to respect Dias's decision, because he is the strongest of the flock. A few seconds later, Klaus remembers that Dias has always been like this, and then we see flashbacks of both of their pasts. In one of the battles of the war, the captain of the
Play War Thunder now. Join millions of players across the globe in massive battles on tanks, aircraft, and helicopters in the most extensive vehicle combat.
Kingdom's soldiers gives the order to retreat. Simply asks Klaus not to die. Klaus doesn't clearly remember what happened next. He was only thinking about driving the enemies away from the refuge and how to support Dias. And as expected, they both managed to defeat them all. After remembering this, Klaus sees that Dias hasn't changed at all since then, not even now that he has a domain. This makes him realize he's been a fool, because he thought he'd be great and honorable by dying, but he was completely wrong. Now that he has a clear vision, he makes it his duty to live to support Dias, because he knows that he is truly trying to become a great lord. The next day, they meet with the elderly women in a large yurt they built for meetings. Maya thanks Dias for building this, and tells him that they will use it so they can work. Alna adds that according to the old women, when the wool from the bars piles up, they will spin yarn and use it to make cloth, which Dias thinks is a pretty good thing. Changing the subject, Dias tells them that now that there are more people, he was thinking of declaring this village, but he can't think of a good name. One of the elders suggests Dias Village, though he doesn't think it's a good idea. Klaus, on the other hand, suggests Dragonslayer Village, but Alna immediately rejects it and proposes Iluk Village, which means first village in the ancient language. After thinking about it for a while and getting the others' approval, Dias decides to choose that name, and with that, he adjourns the meeting. Outside, Grandmother Maya tells Dias that if he wants to get more subjects, he must sell the dragon materials and buy slaves. Without a second thought, he tells her that he hates slavery because he saw many slaves on the battlefield and they all received terrible treatment. For that reason, he plans to prohibit the slave trade in his domain, which makes Alna proud. On the other hand, Maya ends up feeling relieved, since they also hate slavery. And she suggested such a thing because she wanted to know what he really thought, so if he had been interested in the slaves, they would have left. Afterwards, she apologizes through tears, explaining that in the Kazdek's domain, they only heard cruel stories. It turns out that the Lord and his eldest son's hobby is hunting slaves, and they say that the second son, who declared war on them, has a large number of female slaves in his service. Dias assures her that in this domain, in Iluk, that will never happen, and that he doesn't intend to allow it, which makes Maya more than satisfied. Later, Alna informs Dias that she asked a traveling merchant who frequents the Anakin village to come here as well. Once they arrive, what completely perplexes Dias is that the merchant in question is a frog. The merchant, however, treats him with respect as the Dragon Slayer and introduces himself as Pajin Do. Alna explains that he belongs to the Frocken race, while Dias and Klaus still look puzzled since he's a talking frog. Getting to the point, Pajin asks Dias to show him the Earth Dragon's materials. Once Dias confirms with Alna that he's not hostile and is neutral, he places a large sample on the ground. Pajin is quite surprised by this, but clarifies that he doesn't have a problem with it, he just expected it to be something smaller. Putting that aside, he changes his expression to ask her if he really defeated him alone. alone. Diaz immediately understands what's happening. He wants to confirm that his business partner isn't lying. For that reason, he takes his axe and slices the material in two with a single movement, leaving Peijin and his guards quite shocked, while Klaus celebrates wildly at the demonstration. At this point, Peijin confidently agrees to believe him and orders his men to unload the cargo. When they finish, Peijin also brings something else: two girls who appear to be twins. He explains that they weren't wanted in the Beastkin nation, but since he's human, he trusts that Diaz will take them. Right after this, everyone tenses up, while Diaz struggles to contain his anger. He also notices the light has vanished from the girls' eyes, which means they must be orphans like him. But before doing anything, Alna takes her hand and asks her to calm down, and Maya advises her not to make such a scary face in front of the children. They make it clear to Peijin that they do not want to buy slaves, but Peijin quickly clarifies that they're wrong, because these two aren't slaves, and if he hadn't taken them as merchandise, they would be dead now. It turns out that in the village where they were born, they hate twins because they say they bring misfortune. They were going to be executed at birth, so their parents fled the village with them, and he met them during that time. But the strain was immense, and both parents fell ill, and knowing that their days were numbered, they asked him to take care of them. From the beginning, he refused, since he doesn't do charity work, but then they offered to pay him to take them as merchandise, so in the end, he couldn't say no. Besides that money ran out, and now he's in debt, and he gives his word that he had no bad intentions. Alna confirms that he isn't lying, and that the twins are a deep blue. Upon hearing this, Diaz agrees to take care of the girls, offering to pay them with supplies to cover their expenses, which Peijin happily accepts. Once he leaves, Diaz picks up the girls and asks them directly how old they are, and points out that since they are very thin, they will have to eat very well. After that, he introduces himself and asks them their names, but despite his efforts, he receives no response at all. The twins remain silent, and here Diaz thinks that this is not the best way to do it, but that he has no other choice, so he assumes that they do not have names and tells them that he is going to give them one. This time, the twins do end up reacting, and as they remember their parents, they immediately reject that idea. Given this, Diaz asks them again what their names are, because not knowing complicates for him. The first one introduces herself as Senai and the other as Ihan, and hearing those names makes Alna react for some reason. Diaz, on the other hand, continues to be very kind to them, but first invites them to take a bath with Alna so they can change their clothes afterward. After they leave with Alna and Maya, Diaz explains to Klaus that they wanted to protect the precious name their parents gave them, and that's why he used that strategy. He also tells him that before the war he used to act as a father to other orphans, and he hopes everyone is alright. Later, the twins are taken to him, and from their expressions, Diaz understands that they don't fully trust him yet, but for now, it's enough for him to be able to call them by their names. On the other hand, Grandmother Maya knows they aren't human, but she feels they will bring blessings. Moments later, Alna places a different necklace on each of them. Then she explains to Senai that in the ancient language, her name means one who is beautiful like the moon, while Ihan's means the holy moon. With this in mind, she is certain that their parents had a great love for the moon, and that is why she will give them these jewels called ahi, which are said to possess the power of the moon. Thinking about this, the twins remember words their parents told them about how much they loved them and that they would always pray for their happiness. Suddenly, the two begin to cry uncontrollably, so both Diaz and Alna comfort them. He tells them that they were both very strong when they separated from the parents they loved so much, but that they no longer need to hold back, so they can cry if they need to. Alna then tells them that the bars offer to comfort them, as they are good at calming children, so within minutes, the twins are snuggled up in their soft wool. As they vent their feelings, Diaz asks Alna what the ancient language is. She explains that it is a language that no one uses anymore, and that it only exists in legends, and she doesn't know if it is only transmitted among the Anakin. But the truth is that they don't seem human, so perhaps their race interacted with the Anakin in the past. From that day on, the village of Iluk became busier and noisier, and a few days later, now completely comfortable with each other, the twins spend their time arguing about typical childish things, creating a friendly atmosphere. Suddenly, Alna senses the arrival of someone else, a human on horseback coming from the east. Before Diaz goes to check, Alna tells him that the bars find it difficult to leave him, but that now they want to stay close to Senai and Ihan. Right after that, the twins ask Diaz to return soon, and he gives them his word. A little while later, Diaz sees the man approaching, and Alna, while remaining invisible, warns him that her horn is glowing white, so the man doesn't show any hostility. Once the man reaches him and confirms that he is Lord Diaz, he introduces himself as Kamalats, a servant of Eldan Kazdex, the new lord of the Kazdex domain. Following that, he informs Diaz that Eldan wishes to have an audience with him and is already on his way, so he wants to know if he can receive him at his residence. Diaz interrupts him to tell him sternly that they will meet in this very place, and judging by his tone, Kamalats accepts with some fear and turns to leave the way he came. On the other hand, Diaz sees that since he's the new lord, it means the second son won the civil war, but he won't allow someone who surrounds himself with enslaved women into Iluk. Minutes later, he sees a giant platform moving toward him, and on top of it is Eldan Kazdex himself with many other people, which leaves Diaz somewhat shocked. Diaz gets defensive as soon as he sees this, remembering Maya's words about the neighboring lord who was said to have many female slaves attend him. However, to his surprise, Alna informs him that the man on the platform is actually a strong blue, and no one accompanying him is red. The man hastily runs towards Diaz as he apologizes, saying that he just had to meet the man he so admires for himself. He introduces himself as Eldon Kazdex and explains that ever since he was a child, he's had the utmost respect for the kingdom's heroic savior, Diaz the hero, and he got in his head that they should be on good terms. When Diaz realizes he's not a threat, he apologizes for his rude treatment towards Camelots. Eldon assures him there's no need for that, and then decides to ask him who the young woman next to him is. This takes both Diaz and Alna by surprise, because it means he can see her even through her concealment spell. Eldon explains that his ears and nose are keen, so he knows she's there, even though she's very good at hiding. Having no other choice, Alna cancels her spell, and Eldon can't hide his surprise when he sees that she's not human. When Alna tells him that she's Diaz's wife, Eldon asks her if she's demi-human, but she just informs him that she's an Anakin, and that she never heard of the word demi-human. Eldon explains that demi-human is a general term for peoples that aren't human but are similar to them, such as beastkin and fishkin. Alna confirms that she can be considered a demi-human in that case, and as soon as those words leave her mouth, Eldon starts crying loudly, for some reason, asking Diaz if he's had a child with her. Diaz quickly denies it, while Alna clarifies that she plans to have 10 of them, and mentions that they're raising 2 orphans who appear to be demi-humans. Eldon cries even harder when he finds out Diaz has a demi-human wife, and demi-human children as well, and he's so moved by this that his body starts partly transforming into that of an elephant. However, all the strength leaves his body in just a few seconds, so Camelots and the women quickly treat him. As they try to stabilize him, Camelots explains that Eldon is a half demi-human born to a demi-human and a human, which means he can assume either form, but the shift between is quite taxing. Half demi-humans are rare, and being one is an advantage for Eldon, but not having a single stable form does pose its difficulties. Camelots explains that this is why he can't do without the devoted care of his wives. Eldon finally recovers and apologizes, saying that in his excitement, he changed form in spite of himself. Diaz asks him not to worry about it, and instead questions him about the rebellion he's heard of. With a serious expression, Eldon explains that the rebellion was to protect those dear to him. Camelots tells them that when Eldon was born, the previous lord, Enkars, already had a wife and son, but his eldest son's personality was just as hideous as his. Enkars alienated this son, who was so similar to himself, while he was highly fond of Eldon, his son born to an elephantkin slave. The lord declared him his true son, awarding him position and authority. Until he was 5 years old, Eldon thought he was a regular human, but a change occurred that revealed the real him, and he learned that his true mother was kept as a slave. Starting then, he secretly got to know his mother better, and he worked behind the scenes to safeguard demi-humans, all while keeping this from Enkars, who would sooner have them in chains. Eldon explains that he wants to make a world where everyone can live in happiness, whoever their people. Camelots mentions that his wives were all slaves, but Eldon saved them, and, inspired by his ideals, they've chosen to become his caretakers. Alna then asks him about all the talk about the Lord's second son being attended by a bevy of enslaved women. Camelots informs her it was a rumor they spread intentionally, but that in fact, Eldon and his wives love each other with all their hearts. Alna is clearly touched by this, while Diaz decides to remain silent, noticing how much she likes romance. Camelots clarifies that the deception was not easy to maintain, and Enkars was enraged when he learned of Eldon's true goal. He declared he would put every last demi-human in the domain to death, including Eldon and his mother. Eldon raised an army to protect the demi-humans, and after a hard-fought conflict, he defeated Enkars' forces. Diaz now understands what he meant about protecting those dear to him, and Eldon apologizes for forgetting himself in his excitement earlier. He explains that when he heard the hero he admires has a demi-human family, he thought he must be a kindred spirit with the same dream. Diaz still doesn't understand why he addresses him like that, so Eldon tells him that he's talking about the tales of Sir Diaz, heroic savior of the kingdom, which have made their way to Kazdex. Camelots mentions that he's heard the heroic saga of Lord Diaz has even been performed as a stage play in the capital to lift morale and recruit volunteer soldiers. Apparently, public performances were suspended as soon as the aristocracy intervened, but the tales spread by word of mouth, and now everyone knows his story. Diaz clearly didn't know of this, and it's the first time he's heard of it, so he bets the bulk of it is entirely made up. Eldon clarifies that he doesn't believe every single thing he's heard, but returning soldiers talk, and his reputation precedes him, and now that he's met him, he'd say he exceeds the tales. With that in mind, he really hopes they can be on good terms, and that they can work toward a world where demi-humans and humans live together in harmony, because that is his dream. Without giving it much thought, Diaz smiles and tells him that he supports that dream and that humans and demi-humans already coexist in peace in his village, so he thinks it'd be good to see that in more places. Diaz also tells him that his ideals are truly commendable, so he thinks he can afford to take more pride in them without being ashamed. Eldon immediately listens to him and tries to stand with pride, but his feelings win in the end, and he can't help but cry loudly. After he calms down, they both spend the rest of the day talking to have a grasp on the state of the other's domain. Eldon tells him that he'll make a proclamation in Kazdex so that he can find more subjects, but he clarifies that there's something he should do first. He'll be in trouble if he doesn't amass larger food stores, so he must begin producing within his domain, especially if he plans to have more subjects. Winter seems far away, but if he doesn't prepare now, he will come to regret it later. Diaz thanks him for the advice, and Eldon assures him that he plans to be as helpful as possible. Once Eldan leaves, Diaz and Alna return home, but they're welcomed by the screams from the twins, who are very upset. After all, he said he'd be right back, but it's already getting dark, and they waited a long time for him. The girls throw a huge tantrum, and even Diaz is knocked down by all their yelling, so he can do nothing but apologize. Later at night, the twins finally fall asleep, so they at least look happy enough now. Despite this, Alna asks Diaz if he's sure he shouldn't have scolded them, since that tantrum was no small at all. Diaz explains that he's the one who broke a promise, and he wanted to start by apologizing. He knows it's common for children who just joined a family to speak willfully and be wild in order to test the adults, so he'll allow it for now. But if it continues, they're not growing up right, so he intends to set them straight if they keep it up tomorrow. Putting that aside, he decides to talk about the food production Eldon has pointed out, saying that he'll start by cultivating a field, since he did lots of farm work before the war, and he's used to it. Before Alna can say something about it, she suddenly senses intruders, and quite a few of them. They're coming from a different direction than the way Eldon left, and she doesn't think anyone respectable would be wandering around at this hour. Diaz assumes that they're bandits, so Alna decides to go with him because tonight is the new moon, and he couldn't possibly find them without any help. While Klaus holds the fort, Diaz and Alna leave to find and confront the intruders, who are led by a nobleman. One of the mercenaries asks why they're attacking on a night with no moon, so the noble tells him that they'd never beat Diaz head-on in broad daylight. They'll miss their chance if they fail to take him by surprise, so they can't take any risks. The mercenary is still pretty confident and says that there's no possible way they'd lose with this many fighters. The nobleman interrupts him and tells him that he'll give him 100 silver coins if he kills Eldon, and a bonus of 10 gold coins if he kills Diaz. The mercenaries are more motivated after hearing that, but before they can do anything, an arrow suddenly hits one of them. They immediately ditch the torches to hide themselves and decide to target at the red light they can see in the distance. Despite this, the light suddenly disappears, and arrows continue flying towards their direction. The leader of the mercenaries starts panicking because the shots are too accurate, and he doesn't understand how they can tell where they are. He still orders the others to keep firing bolts and arrows, assuring them that they can win with numbers. After doing this, they finally hear voices, so all the mercenaries try to surround them. However, before they can even get closer, Diaz sends them flying with his battle axe. He takes 4 guys down in the blink of an eye and then approaches the leader directly, kicking him on the stomach with force. In a matter of seconds, the leader of the mercenaries recognizes him, and after witnessing Diaz's strength with his own eyes, he realizes even 100 gold coins wouldn't be enough for a monster like him. Meanwhile, the nobleman managed to escape as soon as everything began, so he's currently far into the forest and away from them. Even though he got away, a sharp pang of pain makes him collapse, so he knows that his old wound is acting up and that it's all Diaz's fault. He was doing something that he thought was his due right as a noble, and then Diaz, a commoner who started out as an orphan, had the gall to get angry at him, and he even left him with a wound he would never forget. After all the mercenaries are caught, Diaz scolds them and tells them that they must now understand full well what a foolish thing banditry is. Then, as lord of this land, he pronounces their punishment, which is simply expelling them from his territory. After they leave, Alna asks Diaz if kicking them out wasn't too light a sentence, considering what they were trying to do. Diaz explains that no harm was done on their side, so it just felt appropriate, though he admits that he did lose his cool when an arrow grazed her. Fortunately, they had no casualties, and if they learn their lesson, then all the better. If they get up to no good in his domain again, though, he has no intention of holding back. Alna agrees with him, but says that it is a shame one of them got away, because it means he didn't learn the lesson. Diaz tells her that there were too many of them, so that's hard to prevent. Despite that, she still thinks they should be pleased with such a big haul they got out of this situation. Diaz knows that she's talking about the weapons they confiscated from the mercenaries, but he doesn't look very convinced, so he asks her if those beat-up weapons really fetch that much money. Alna explains that steel is precious out on the prairie, so they can melt them down to make all sorts of tools. That's why bandit hunting can turn such a tidy profit, and the chieftain will pay a bounty too. As they walk back home, Alna illuminates the path and mentions that her family wasn't exactly what they'd call well off, so she would dream of hunting scores of bandits like this. However, it's rare that they come out to the grasslands, so when she sensed the carriage Diaz arrived in, she was so excited that maybe some bandits had finally turned up, but then it departed immediately, leaving just one person, which made her figure he had been abandoned for dead. The next morning, she came to check while she was on patrol, and she was shocked to find a man sleeping there without a care in the world. She used soul appraisal Diesel to be safe, and his strong blue really threw her for a loop. For a moment, she nearly convinced herself he was a bandit anyway so she could kill him and take his axe and armor. Diaz's expression goes blank after hearing what his fate could have been, but Alna continues and admits that she still wonders why it occurred to her to talk to him instead. She could have decided killing him was extreme and just left him there after all. In truth, she can't explain it, and before she knew it, she was talking to him, but it got her the life she has now, so it wasn't a bad choice at all. Despite that, even now, she still wonders sometimes why she chose to speak to him anyway. Alna suddenly uses concealment to hide herself from Diaz, and before he knows it, she's by his side, giving him a kiss on his cheek. Diaz is left speechless after this, and despite how confident she was at first, Alna soon panics with embarrassment and decides to run away from him. Without a second thought, Diaz chooses to chase after her, because he knows that he can only move forward with her light parting the darkness for him. The next day, he decides to see the chieftain to tell her that he wants to cultivate fields, because Alna told him that he can't tend the soil here. That's what the people of the Anakin village have always said, and they usually only grow potted plants. Maul explains that crops won't grow in these plains for some reason, but Diaz clarifies that he only needs her to tell him how to grow potted plants, because even if farming proves difficult, he'd still like to give it a go. That's simple enough. So Maul accepts and gives him some verdant leaf stones, saying that he has to lush with greenery. That's what they instantly goes pet energy, and he can't put any into them. Pretty or not, without any magical energy, it's hard to call that anything but a rock. Alna mentions that Sinai and Ihan can also tell, since they're both quite capable for their age. He starts working on the field hunt and how they managed to sneak into a wagon bound for the desert. The little mouse with glasses, named Ema, is glad that they'll make it home after all. However, the other mice clarify that this wagon isn't headed for the desert, and they can tell by the angle of the sun. Despite this, they explain that they're staying put because what they're really after is the Dragon Slayer. They want to kill the human who killed a dragon and prove how mighty they are and restore glory and pride to the desert folk. Ima is clearly against this and tells them that they can't do that since she only helped them because they said they had a plan to get into a wagon and get back to the desert. She also warns them that the guy they're after is stronger than a dragon, so there's no way they stand to kill them. Two other
Enjoy great fresh specials this week at Woolworths. Like Australian Trust tomatoes, just $4.90 a kilo. Shop in store or online today at Woolworths.
Can you tell if
EVE Online is a vast universe.
a myth his parents told him as a child. Words are wisdom God gave to people, and only people can speak them. Camelotz informs him that these little guys belong to a people known as big-eared hopping mousekin, though they insist on being called desert folk. They live in a desert region beyond the kingdom's southernmost border, but slave hunts were carried out there, so Eldon has long protected them. However, their distrust of humans made them reject him either way. After learning this, Diaz tells Camelotz that he'll leave their punishment to him, and clarifies that they don't need to do anything to make up for this, but if they insist, he'll accept. Camelotz thanks him and gives him a cargo manifest for all the farm tools and other things Eldon is providing to them, which is more than Diaz had asked for. Diaz reads Eldon's letter, where he says that in addition to the farm tools he promised, he presents him with spices and other such specialties from his domain. He mentions that the wagons and horses transporting them are also his to keep, in the hope that they may continue uninterrupted trade and correspondence. Eldon also mentions in his letter that he sends all this as a token of friendship, and he expects nothing in return. Diaz is shocked to know that he doesn't have to pay for this, and to top it all off, Camelotz also informs him that Eldon sent materials to build a stable, so they'll undertake the construction of it. Even if it's all a gift, Diaz really feels indebted now, so he wonders if Earth Dragon materials would make an appropriate thank you gift. On the other hand, Alna is completely thrilled to when other people are around. As soon as they get back home, Diaz starts working on the fields with the help of Klaus and the white geese Eldon gifted them. Once they're done, Grandma Maya offers them water and says that they must let the soil rest for about 3 days, then plant seeds. She mentions that in their village, they used wood ash to keep the earth in good condition, so she hopes that's all it takes here. She also thinks they should dig a cistern as well, because the nearby stream isn't very big, and they might need water during dry summers. Klaus' secret, he might sprout the following towards the stables. Diaz decides to check the fields with Alna in the meantime, but unfortunately, the seeds they planted didn't grow as planned. Despite this, he simply says that these things don't often work on the first try, and that maybe they didn't let the soil rest long enough, so he'll replant and see what happens. During the next following days, the same thing happens over and over, no matter what he changes in the process or how much he tries. He's starting to lose hope little by little, so Alna stops him and asks him to let it rest, saying that it's not good for the soil to keep mixing in that much leaf stone, and this just means means it's impossible to grow crops in the grassland. Diaz finally accepts it, knowing that life is full of stuff like this, and there's nothing he can do about it. When the twins realize he's given up, they start wondering what to do, because they really want to help him. Just then, they suddenly hear a voice asking for help, so they quickly follow it until they reach one of the warehouses where the materials sent by Eldon are stored, where Ima is trapped in one of the boxes. The twins quickly open the wooden box to get her out, so Amer starts crying out of happiness, thanking them for saving her. After all, she's been in this box for a long time, and it really was terrible, so she owes the two of them her life. Both Ihan and Sinai happily introduce themselves and ask her who she is out of curiosity. They find real, and the twins then from happening, even if problem. She also when they have to relieve themselves at night. The twins explain that Diaz or Alna go with them, so they've never been outside on their own at night. Amer recognizes that this is a problem, since her presence apparently doesn't reassure them. To her surprise, Ihan and Sinai find comfort in the seed. Tries to ask them to let her go because they're going to find her if they don't. Despite all her efforts, the twins are already deeply asleep, and why he's different. Not having the answer, somebody claiming to be fool the mice, and they failed either way. While he complains about his failure, a pretty woman approaches him to ask him if he wants to have some fun. Already knowing her intentions, the nobleman suddenly snaps and harshly grabs her face, asking her to get lost. The woman immediately runs away in fear, asking him what his doesn't think the youngest, Princess Diana, inform him that something has happened, and she asks him to hurry up and come with her. He's never seen her so surprised, so Diaz quickly follows her, and Maya informs him that reassures him and asks him to pay it no mind. He then lets him know that the reason for his visit is to deliver a letter from Eldon, which is urgent in nature. Diaz stares at the pigeon for a long time. He asks her if the twins have said anything.